Oklahoma and Auburn are at the crossroads of the college football season in must-win territory heading into the month of October. So who comes out on top between the Sooners and the Tigers out in Jordan-Hare Stadium? Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, breaking down everything that we will see as the number 21 Oklahoma Sooners travel to the Plains to take on the Auburn Tigers. Real quickly, make sure that you smash that subscribe button down below. This is your number one source for all things SEC moving forward. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to check out all of our great work, make sure that you visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Use the promo code SECU at MyBookie.ag to receive a special welcome offer with your first purchase at sign up. Welcome deposit. Welcome on into SEC Unfiltered. Do so at mybookie.ag with the promo code SECU. Dave, I don't know what to make of this game because for Auburn, it truly feels like you are in the must-win now situation because the schedule is going to get more daunting. They're no longer going to have the support of the fan base because they're traveling on the road for the next month. And on top of it, you just need to keep morale at an all-time high going into what is going to be the tough part of your schedule because at the same time, there's 8 more games to play. And after what we saw on Saturday in what had to have been the performance of the blundering and the blind leading the blind, it's only going to get worse. But for Oklahoma, I also think that this is a very important game for them because it truly will dictate where they sit among the SEC teams. But we know that Tennessee is going to be a contender. We know that Tennessee is going to be one of, if not the team to beat in the SEC alongside Alabama, alongside Texas, alongside Georgia, alongside Ole Miss. But where does Oklahoma fall into that category? Are they more so on the let's wait and see for 2025 reign? Or are they, we're going to give you our best punch. If you don't go ahead and believe and give your A game, you're going to be going home with an L.
Yeah, I think from an Oklahoma perspective, this isn't the goal going into the season, what I'm about to say. But I think if you were to win Saturday, and like you said, Cole, it's getting into must-win territory for both teams here. I think if Oklahoma wins Saturday, they can comfortably say, I think they get to 6, which is obviously the first check box of everybody sees if they get in there. Again, not every team's like, hey, we're at 6, we're not going to celebrate it. But I think from a fan's perspective, you breathe a little easier, like, all right, if we beat Auburn, we're at 4. I think we'll go get 2 out of the remaining – what do we have, 7 games left on our schedule. I think we'll be fine. I think they get to bowl eligibility with a win here. Auburn, I wouldn't go that far yet with a win. They're in a bowl yet. But loser of this, I mean, I think we've said this about a couple games in the SEC this year. He's going to feel really bad leaving Jordan-Hare Stadium on Saturday afternoon. Big one across the board. I mean, we got quarterback changes across the board. Both defenses, I mean, Oklahoma's defense, I think, is one of the more complete in the league, if not the most complete from top to bottom. Auburn, an improving defense. But, man, yeah, I think Auburn fans thought they would be 4-0 rolling into this one. I think Sooner fans thought they would be at least, I mean, and they are. They're 3-1, but would look a little better. It's how you look. I think it's fair and objective to say through 4 weeks, Oklahoma's probably looked worse than most people have expected. I know they got 3 win's a win, but I think overall, especially offensively, they have left a lot of meat on the bone, a lot to be desired within the first 4 weeks of the season.
What's so interesting is that there was a moment where it truly did feel like they were going to turn the corner. And we all kind of thought, or at least you and I thought, Oklahoma is better than advertised. Their offensive line has some questions. Their wide receiver core, though, is going to be explosive. They have a good ground game. They trust their quarterback in Jackson Arnold. They have a top-tier defense. I think most of us believe that if they were able to work out the mechanical kinks in the trenches, they may be going into this game undefeated against an Auburn team that we also thought they brought in the right pieces in the recruiting. They added in some transfers. They looked like the more physical team in that first game against Alabama A&M. And now you're telling me that they're sitting potentially at 2-3 with a gusto of problems ahead, a myriad of concerns well past just the quarterback position. It truly does feel like both these teams need to win for different reasons. But you did bring up the offense. Let's go talk about that real fast. Oklahoma is making a switch. Jackson Arnold out, Michael Hawkins in. And there's a lot of people that are going to probably wonder what is the best course of action moving into Red River, because we all know that with that game, you throw the spreadsheet out, you throw out the X's and O's, let it just be 3 hours of spit swap and nonstop football. Somebody's coming out on top. For right now, just to get right, just to get back to what we know, I think that this was the right call. I think Michael Hawkins, the way he played in Saturday's game in Norman against a Tennessee defense that now deserves not only our attention, but also deserves our praise at the highest level. I feel like that this gives you the opportunity to hit the reset button and maybe work out some things that are going to benefit you when you have to play against the other competition, such as South Carolina, such as in Missouri, such as a Texas, such as an LSU late in the season.
No, I think it was the right move. I mean, again, I haven't really been a big fan of the Seth Littrell hire since he really hired. I don't think it fit into what Jackson Arnold likes to do. I think Jackson Arnold can be a good quarterback. He has a lot of tools, highest upside in that quarterback room for sure. But I don't think he fits this specific RPO run pass option system. I think he fits more of the Jeff Lebby, Josh Heupel type of thing. And they run RPOs too. Everyone does to an extent now. But the basis of the Oklahoma offense is the RPO. I think when you talk about the injuries they have on the offensive line, the lack of continuity on the offensive line, I think Hawkins gives you that mobility, improvisation, ability to maneuver in the pocket, to go make plays, extend plays. We saw him go take off and make the play on the goal line that he scored that the guy had to bust a spleen or liver to score through. So, I mean, that had to fire you up if you're a Sooner fan, Oklahoma fan, that he can do that. Jackson Arnold, they brought him in on the goal line situation, but he's more of between the tackles, design run type guy like that.
It also made no sense because of like they had the running back score. Like he didn't even be utilized on that play. I think that they just wanted I think that Hawkins had the wind knocked out of him, and that was why Arnold came in.
And had to come in, yeah. I mean, Arnold's more used in the design run game, I think, just overall with where you're at injury-wise, even offensive line and receiver, if we want to be completely honest. I think Hawkins gives you that ability to go make some plays when things break down. I mean, look, Auburn struggled against running quarterbacks the last 2 weeks. They did it against the Davalier kid, I believe. Dampier kid at New Mexico 2 weeks ago, and then against Taylor Green last week. They've given up some critical 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 where they've lost containment and the quarterbacks have made plays on their edge. Auburn's even had their corners, DBs, come bail and leave guys wide open because they were concerned about that. So that's probably a little bit in Seth Littrell, Brent Venables' mindset a little bit like, hey, this team struggled a little bit with mobile quarterbacks. I think this fits into what we want to do this week. Again, I think it was a smart move. It's interesting he chose to do this early in the week where you got Hugh Freeze came out yesterday at his press conference and said they're going to battle it out this week, Peyton Thorne and Hank Brown. And I think last time, I think it was maybe Thursday, he announced Hank Brown was the starter going into New Mexico. So maybe we see it in 2 more days. Hugh Freeze makes that announcement. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have it's going to come down to the quarterbacks in this game. I mean, both these defenses, I think, are Oklahoma's defense really good. Like I mentioned, Auburn's solid. Again, it's going to be takeaways. Auburn last in the country, 14 total turnovers they've had in 4 games, 10 against Power 4 teams, against Cal and Arkansas this past week. Oklahoma leads the country in defensive takeaways. So you have one end of the spectrum versus the other. We'll see how it goes.
Well, they should, but at the same time, I think the big reason is they're a veteran core that all has stayed together. I mean, there's certainly an expectation, I think, that when you talk about this Oklahoma defense, where they know how good they are, they were kind of felt disrespected last year, being called great for the Big 12, and they've made the statement literally in every game. And even if they haven't been able to show it with a win against Tennessee still struggled. They got 2 early turnovers against Nico Iamaleava. They were able to force a couple of 3-and-outs. And the way that Tennessee's offense is humming, most teams are going to have trouble with that. Oklahoma didn't. They allowed a couple of explosive plays, but that's bound to happen for, I think, any roster. The problem is that I don't know where the explosivity resides currently in Auburn. And you talk about their defense, you talk about Auburn and where they are currently underneath DJ Durkin. I think that they're better than where they were underneath Ron Roberts, but they're still making critical mistakes after critical mistakes. The physicality at times isn't there. When they are in the open field and not tackling, it just looks abysmal. The pass rush outside of the freshmen have been really, really struggling. The interior has been a hit and miss at times. So for Oklahoma, with Michael Hawkins now starting, this is a game to just get right, get morale back, and then go into the bye week and decide what is the best course of action. Because if there's also a truth of this, knowing that no quarterback was going to be dominantly successful against a Tennessee front 7 that has definitely dominated all season, with that offensive line. It could have been Sam Bradford. You could have had Dylan Gabriel back there. You could have had Jackson Arnold. You could have had Michael Hawkins. You could have called on Kyler Murray, and maybe he would have been a little bit more aggressive with the running. But besides that, you still were going to have those struggles. For Auburn's sake, at some point, Hugh Freeze has to decide what does he want to do at quarterback and just stick with it. Because if you constantly are going back and forth making these switches, number one, you're going to kill the confidence of Hank Brown, who, let's just call a spade, looked awful. Looked absolutely almost unwatchable and certainly unplayable against Arkansas's defense. 3 turnovers in the first half. They decided to go back to number one. But also you're going to realize that whenever he transfers, and if he does transfer at the end of the year, his confidence is going to be shot because of you consistently are saying, nope, you're going out there, but now you're not the guy. Nope, you're going out there, but now you're not the guy. So for Hugh Freeze's sake, whatever he decides to do this week, whether it be Hank Brown, whether it be Peyton Thorne, whether it be Holden Griner for that matter, and it probably won't, when he decides on who his quarterback is, you got to steer him to the skid for the rest of the season. That's the guy bearing an injury that you have to start.
Yeah, and it's wild to say. I think Peyton Thorne probably gives him that best shot just because he has that running dynamic.
It's weird, right? Like, it's weird that is the bet. Like, that gives you a better shot of winning. And you know what you know what he is.
It's like the lesser of two evils. And again, don't take that the wrong way, people. I'm not calling these people evil people. I'm just saying it's like it's not good across the board. But I think if you were asking a defensive coordinator who they'd rather scheme up against, it would be Hank Brown, because I think Peyton Thorne, you do have to add a defender to account for him in the run game. You don't have to do that for Hank Brown, so they can drop more guys into coverage. It's just a numbers game. I would go with Peyton Thorne. I agreed with Hugh Freeze making that move to start the second half. It just made sense. They had no spark or anything going for them. I think you had to make that move. I might practice this week. That's what he's judging on, or sounds like sometimes he meets with these guys and whoever grades the best on the multiple choice test or whatever he talks about in his press conferences gets the start. So I don't know what he's ultimately going to determine. I personally would roll with Peyton Thorne. That's probably what we'd see if I was a bet man. I'd probably roll. That's who Hugh Freeze thinks as well. I mean, they have other issues too. Offensive line, receivers running the wrong routes. It's just a whole combination of different things as well. Not just the quarterback. Quarterback's majority of the issue, but overall not the big issue. You mentioned Auburn defensively. I thought Durkin had a pretty good plan against Taylor Green early, but again, Auburn is just not technique fundamental-wise a consistent team. I do think on the back end that Champ Anthony injury broke his leg against Arkansas. I think that is going to hurt them. Maybe not this week against Oklahoma because Oklahoma's so beat up at receiver. And I don't know if Michael Hawkins is going to be the one to go stretch the field against them this week. But I think at some point that will hurt them also. I mean, Oklahoma's, speaking of their injury front, I mean, they're moving the Jacoby Johnson kid? The Jacoby Johnson kid from DB to wide receiver for extra bodies. I mean, they're so beat up at that spot that we all thought would be a strength. And to be fair, I'm not going to bash. I mean, it's just unfortunate injury luck. It's not really a determination on Oklahoma's wide receiver room or Emmett Jones or wide receivers coach. It is what it is. It's just unfortunate. You got to get bodies over there to potentially play. Man, this game, again, I think it's just going to come down. I think this game's going to be a little closer. People think the line. I'm assuming the line came out at 2.5 because I'm thinking Vegas is thinking, we talked about it in our group message. I think they think Auburn's turnover numbers just can't sustain. I mean, I agree with that. I mean, who's going to consistently average 4 to 5 turnovers a game through the rest of the year? So I think they think that comes back down at some point. I'm assuming that's why they think this game's going to be close because it came out at 2.5 before they even talked about the quarterback change or before they officially made it. That came out Sunday. So I think I could see this being a close game because I think Oklahoma's going to be pretty conservative on offense because I think they're thinking, just don't turn the football over. We should win this game. How does Oklahoma come in? Another storyline of this. Emotionally, that was a physical game. You talked about it, Cole. It was in a really physical game against Tennessee last week, an emotional game. You're going on the road. You got to get on a bus. You played a late game Saturday. You got to get on a flight, then a bus. The Auburn trip isn't awesome because you're staying in Montgomery. It's kind of a long trip back and forth, about a 45-minute bus trip to Auburn. You got to bus it back afterwards. It'll be interesting. The toll on this Oklahoma team coming off that big emotional game, obviously a loss. But does the defense, that concerns me, do they stay with the same attention to detail, focus for this game? That would concern me a little bit. But I think it's just going to come down to what quarterback, who knows for Auburn who it is, Peyton Thorne or our Hank Brown, and then obviously Coleman or Michael Hawkins from Oklahoma, who turns the ball over, who makes the least amount of mistakes, is obviously going to win this football game.
You know what the thing is with Peyton Thorne? You know what you're going to get at this point. And at the same time, you can game plan your offensive production and strategy all around it. The thing with a guy like Hank Brown, you take a shot because if you don't know what the whole upside is, you don't know where the kinks are, you don't know where the positives and negatives reside, you know everything about Peyton Thorne at this point. He's not changing as a quarterback. You can wish that he has the performance of a lifetime against Georgia. You can pray that he ends up balling out against Alabama. But the standard is the standard of what we've seen for him at QB. And it's not going to be any different because he's playing against Oklahoma. I think for my main takeaway in this game, if I am Oklahoma's sake, it's be able to keep things hidden that you want to do with Michael Hawkins before you have to play Texas. If they can run a conservative game plan to where they feel confident that Hawkins will be able to make things interesting against Texas, they don't need to open up the playbook. They need to just be constantly pushing the ball in the open field, quick strikes to Bauer Sharp. If you go ahead and you get whoever is playing wide receiver that day, because God knows who's going to be healthy this week, just short, intermediate passes. You get a couple of runs to Gavin Sawchuk. You get a couple of runs in the backfield. You get a couple of QB designs. You don't need to show the entire kitchen sink against Auburn. And for me, that's a big deal because of, I think that with Texas, again, that game is just so unpredictable. It's always just a toss-up. You never know what you're going to get on that Saturday when you play in Dallas. You don't want to show all your cards to Texas to where they can get at least something prepared for. Whoever is the quarterback, Arnold, Hawkins, regardless of what they think about the offensive line. I feel like that's where the question is.
Yeah, you're a little more confident. I feel like you're not predicting anything, but I feel like you're a little more confident in this game for Oklahoma. I think they got to do whatever they got to do to win this game. Because you lose this game, you're going to be probably bowl eligibility will be staring at you right in the face. You'll be like, you have to win this game. I don't think it's a look ahead. We're just getting ready for Texas type game because you have your own issues offensively as well. Yeah, you're better on defense than Auburn. You have just as many offensive issues as they do. Your offensive play caller doesn't really know what he wants to do. You got offensive linemen slide protecting the wrong way. You got running backs lining up on the wrong way. Quarterbacks not getting people lined up. I think Oklahoma needs to empty the tank here. You have to win this game because if you lose, the Texas game doesn't mean anything to you at that point. Sure, for bragging rights, throw the records out.
Yeah, no, it means something for bragging rights, but that's about it.
That's about it. You have to win Saturday. Must win for both teams. So I mean, you probably agree to disagree on that one. I'm not saving anything for Texas. I have to win this game Saturday.
No, I'm not. If you have to do it, you have to do it because you got to come away with the win. I'm just saying the game plan and strategy that I'm hoping for Oklahoma's sake is that you don't have to open up the playbook. That what you have fundamentally is good enough to get you a win in a hostile environment, in a place where if you don't turn the ball over, there's a 90% shot that you're walking away with the dub. That's it for me. We always do this, players to watch for in this game. I think for Auburn, it's literally going to have to be, for my standard, Cam Coleman. Coleman had such a bad drop against Arkansas. Like, I know that Peyton Thorne is not QB1 for almost any other team in the SEC, but the one interception that he had, that is a clean catch that should have been made, that just stayed up in the air long enough for a turnover that led to a touchdown. How do you respond? Because for my sake, when I'm looking at a young receiver trying to show why they are going to be a difference maker for a program in the long haul, I need to see what they can provide and how they can quickly just turn it off and get right back into the huddle. So I want to see how he responds. This is going to be a physical fight. This is going to be a defense that does not allow a ton of explosive plays. If you have an opportunity to strike, I feel like that's got to be it. And I feel like Cam Coleman provides that for you. And I feel like he's the best shot of giving you that opportunity to take the top off of a defense. Very similar to what we saw last week with Keandre Lambert-Smith. At this point, we kind of know who Keandre Lambert-Smith is. He's a quality number 2 that you really want to see step up as a number 1 in must-win moments. I feel like that we haven't seen the whole untapped potential for Cam Coleman. And that responsive mechanism is so critical, I think, to any type of wide receiver.
From an Auburn player standpoint, I'm going to go with the low-hanging fruit, obvious one. It's going to be whoever starts at quarterbacks. I think that's where it starts. That's where it begins. Have to limit the turnover, whatever the hell you do, dude. Limit the turnovers, guys. I mean, Auburn, I think, can be in this game in the fourth quarter if they have maybe a turnover heading into the fourth quarter. I think they can be in this game, and that's if you're Auburn, if you're Hugh Freeze, that's all you're asking for at home. Maybe just kind of keep the crowd around, keep them engaged. Oklahoma's starting a first-time starting quarterback on the road. And I think, again, for Michael Hawkins, you like the things you saw when he came into the game. But it's a little different when you were, again, good and bad, pros and cons. The pros, you know going in, you're the guy. So you're preparing all week like your starter. I know the cliche, prepare like you're the starter if you're the backup. But there is a little bit of a different little pep in your step. And you're like, no, I know I'm getting the first reps. Like, it's not just by injury going down. So I think that's a benefit for him. The other side of it, though, is it's different going into a start where you need this game. And it's not, you're down, 24-3. And it's like, hey, man, I got nothing to lose, man. I can just sling this around. Can't be worse than what we just put on the field. People have confidence. It's not a big deal. Also, too, Auburn is going to be preparing for you, too. Tennessee didn't prepare for him. So that's something to keep in mind from a pro standpoint. He gets to prepare, but also so does Auburn. And it's a little different starting the game there. But no, I mean, I'm with you. I think the thing to me will be just for Auburn quarterbacks, dude, that you have to limit the turnovers. Same with Oklahoma. I mean, I'm not trying to take over yours because you're going to say a player to watch, but I'm going to say real quick, I'm not going to say a player for Oklahoma. Yeah, Michael Hawkins could be the guy potentially that it could be. I'm looking at Seth Littrell. He's not a player, but how do you dumb down that offense where you take out the run pass option? It's for, layman's terms for people listening, you have three options. Either you can hand it off, he can run the football, or he can pass it. Tennessee defended it perfectly. It's like the old triple option. They put a man. They accounted for the quarterback if he ran. They accounted for a man in the run back, and they played a lot of man coverage on the back end. They did last week. If you go back and watch the film, they played a lot of man coverage and played it man-to-man and shut down Oklahoma's receivers. Oklahoma's receivers, a lot of them are out. Jaleel Farouk, Nick Anderson, go down the line. Deion Burst went out. Is that how Auburn defended? Because DJ Durkin is a good schemer. Again, though, if I'm Oklahoma, if I'm Seth Littrell and Brent Venables, I'm going to make the reads for Michael Hawkins. We're not going to go out there and ask him to go make a bunch of reads on the road in his first start. I think you're setting him up for failure in that situation. So I'm looking at Seth Littrell to see how basic is he dumb this down. Maybe not from like a passing game standpoint, but from a decision-making cognitive ability for Michael Hawkins.
Yeah, I'm not going to deny that the offensive personnel has got to just dumb it down, I think, for Hawkins in this game. But I'm going to go a step further and say the run game has to be potent. I think that you have to finally get that ground game moving again. And because right now, Jackson Arnold leads your team in rushing with 138 yards. But number 2 is Javonte Barnes, and that's my player I'm watching for. Scored the touchdown late in the fourth quarter, 1-yard run. He had no life. There was nothing to be able to do against that that Tennessee defensive front. How can you create the opportunities when you get at the line of scrimmage to work to the outside and make it second and manageable to where the playbook can be a little bit more, not condensed, but rather expanded? How can you find ways to win in pass pro to keep a guy like Michael Hawkins in the pocket a little bit longer to deliver that strike down the field? How can you be that security blanket in the flats if they need you to go ahead and just get that quick 3-yard route to find their way to the first down? I feel like Javonte Barnes is kind of taken over as now that lead back. Gavin Sawchuk, depending on how he plays, that's a whole different story. But Barnes maybe offers you a little bit more at this point. And it feels like that he's also got that physicality to probably punch it in when you're in the red zone, get that touchdown. So I'm going to be watching for him. I'm really watching for the run game in general, but I think Javonte Barnes might give you your best chance for a young quarterback with his physical brand of play to go and get that win. All right, let's lock in some predictions. Game going to be kicking off at 2:30 Eastern, ABC, 2:30. My apologies. Let's go back. Start from the beginning. 2:30 Central, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. Jordan-Hare Stadium. Line currently set at -2.5 in favor of in favor of Oklahoma. 46.5 over under. Dave, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, 2.5. I think this game's going to be close. I think it is. But if you turn the football over, you have a quarterback issue. I don't know who your quarterback is rolling into this game. Oklahoma's defense is as complete as any other defense in this league. As long as they don't come in beat up and they have some interesting injuries that we don't really know about. I mean, the thing I like about it is the injury report. They can't really hide that stuff anymore. So I do appreciate that from that perspective. But from an Oklahoma perspective, I just think some way, somehow they get it done. I trust Oklahoma more. I trust that defense, trust the back end, the guys that create the turnovers, Billy Bowman, Peyton Bowman. I think Robert Spears-Jennings has been playing really good for them recently. He had a good game against Tennessee. I trust them. I just think Auburn, until I see it again, they're last in the country and giving the football away. Oklahoma's number 1. I think that carries into Saturday. I don't think Auburn's going to go be a 4 or 5 turnover team this week. I do think it'll be 3. I think they have a last critical one late in the game. Give me Oklahoma 23-20. I think it's going to be an ugly game, but I do think I do think Auburn looks a little better on offense at times. Maybe gets a shorter field off a turnover, but I do think Oklahoma, Seth Littrell, Brent Venables are not going to put Michael Hawkins in situations to fail. But I do think Oklahoma still does their thing defensively. They're going to force 2 to 3 turnovers. I think that'll be the difference. I think it's closer than people think. I'm leaning with Vegas a little bit. Give me Oklahoma getting the win. They need it. Going into the bye week, like Cole mentioned, before Red River, 23-20. Give me the Sooners. Until I see Auburn stop turning the football over, beating themselves, I can't predict them to beat a good team, especially against one of the better defenses in the league.
When I talk about this game, I look at matchups and I try to figure out who comes out on top in that matchup to decide who I'm going to pick. You look at the secondary. I immediately take Oklahoma over Auburn's. You look at the linebacker play. Immediately take Oklahoma over Auburn's. Defensive line. Immediately, it's not even a question right now. And I feel like that even though the strength of Auburn maybe is their defensive ends, it maybe is their front. It's maybe their front seven. It's nowhere near where Oklahoma's is. Offensive line, I lean Auburn. Wide receivers, I lean Auburn. Running back, I lean Auburn. And so they're 3-3 right now going into this. It comes down to the quarterback. And I don't know what to make of Michael Hawkins. I still don't know what to make entirely of Jackson Arnold. I feel like that if they threw him out there to start, you would see a better version of what probably could have been against Tulane, what could have been against Houston. I feel like that you would feel confident in either one of these two starting. But they're anomalies. They could end up having tremendous careers. They could end up having disastrous careers. But we truly don't know what they are. I know what you are if you're Peyton Thorne. I know what you are if you're Hank Brown at this point, playing in a bigger competition against a even lesser tier defense, and you got the big dogs coming into town. I can't trust that. And I also can't trust the coaching right now. That is a big emphasis that I need to stress more than ever. When Oklahoma lost that game, accountability was taken on so many different levels from the coaching side, but also they seem like that they're at least properly coached to where they're never in jeopardy of losing if it's a close call. Now, if they're down by how many they were against Tennessee, different story. But it doesn't feel that way in Auburn. The repercussions, the finding a way to respond mechanism, it was lifeless on Saturday. And I don't want to blame the players, and I don't want to say that Hugh Freeze threw his players under the bus because of, did he? Yeah. Do they also get paid? Do they also get paid an NIL collective that allows them to now face that type of criticism? Absolutely. So I can't judge that. But what I can judge is coaching and the coaching performance from everyone when they were able just to watch turnover after turnover after turnover. It was kind of pathetic. And until I see that spark on the coaching staff, I can't pick Auburn. I agree that it's a close call. I think it's a worse game. I don't see either one of these offenses scoring a lot of points. I'm going to go 17-10 final score in favor of Oklahoma. I just don't see a scenario where even though you have a good running back, even though you have quality wide receivers, even though you may have a better offensive line than Oklahoma does right now, Oklahoma has two quarterbacks that you would love to see down on the Plains. And honestly, if you are Hugh Freeze, you might be doing a little bit of self-scouting at what you're seeing in a guy such as Hawkins, just in case he were to enter the transfer portal.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think as the game gets closer, your initial reaction, like, oh, Auburn's not going to be able to muster up against Oklahoma. And that's probably true. Offensively, they're not going to probably put up a bunch of points against Oklahoma. But you go look on the other side, too, you're like, yeah, I don't know what Oklahoma is really going to do either. So, again, I mean, you said it's going to come down to some critical mistakes, maybe some critical penalties late in the game. I just see this being a close game because I think Auburn's back into a corner. They're desperate. I just think this game's going to be close. They're getting Oklahoma off a perfect game. I mean, first SEC game, Tennessee, physical game, emotional. I think it's going to come down to the wire.
So who comes out on top, Auburn or Oklahoma? You heard our predictions. Let's hear yours. Make sure you hit the comment section with your overall thoughts. Make sure that also you like, rate, review, subscribe. Follow us on the social channels at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mock10Sports, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Download the podcast version of the show and check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. Drew and Harry will be rocking and rolling, but who comes out? War Eagle, Boomer Sooner. Regardless, later.